is upping the ante. According to the Wall Street Journal, the streaming giant is pivoting to an all-cash offer for Warner Brothers Discovery Studios and streaming assets. It's another power play meant to clear the air as Paramount Skydance's hostile bid for WBD continues to cast a shadow over the deal. Joining me now with his take on the potential outcome of all of this is Rich Greenfield, partner in media and technology analyst at LightShed Partners. Obviously, this saga has been ongoing. Rich, thanks for being with us. So what do you think?
I'm getting tired of talking about it, Julie.
Join the club, you know? So I'm just curious, what do you think the ultimate outcome is going to be? Who's going to win this thing, and what's going to be the final thing that sort of makes it end?
Well, look, I think the moving to an all-cash bid, which hasn't happened yet, but wouldn't surprise me. Netflix reports Tuesday after the close. It wouldn't be surprising that sort of ahead of or tied to earnings if they make this adjustment. They're not doing it. I don't really believe they're doing it because their stock is modestly below the collar, which would mean that the overall bid is 30, 40 cents light from what they said originally. I think this is about timing. Paramount has talked about the fact that they think they can get regulatory approval far faster than Netflix. Now, whether that's true or not, when you think about states and foreign markets, like there is still a lot that we don't know in terms of the regulatory review process. But in moving to all cash allows for a shareholder vote that could be in March versus a shareholder vote that would have probably have been in June. And so no one's going to have regulatory approval on this. It's not even possible to have March regulatory approval. So you sort of move that at least perceived by Paramount advantage, you take that off the table, and you basically put pressure on Paramount. If they're going to raise their bid, they've got to raise their bid sooner than later.
Okay, so if it does go to cash and it goes to a shareholder vote in March, Paramount has said they're going to take their bid to a shareholder vote also. If you were a shareholder, I mean, what's the most appealing outcome here?
I think the problem is right now with Paramount, again, assuming an all-cash bid, I think Paramount is in a tough place because with their bid where it is, the value of Discovery Global, I know Paramount has continued to say it's worthless. And remember, they need the split not to happen, because if the split happens, all of the cash flow that they need to finance this transaction disappears too. So mission critical for Paramount is to stop the split of Warner Brothers and Discovery Global. Discovery Global is spinning off. The board looks at that as a critical transaction because they want to get these cable networks off their books. They want to start chopping them up, selling CNN to someone, selling Food Network and HGTV. Like, they basically want to run an auction for the entire portfolio of assets. That's only possible if you get this split accomplished. And so I think unless Paramount meaningfully raises its bid, I don't think a couple of dollars does it, they have to meaningfully $4, $5, maybe even $6 raise the bid. And that's going to require a heck of a lot more cash that right now they don't appear to have, because I think if they had more cash, they would have already raised their bid.
So you came out with your predictions at the beginning of the year, and you said you thought the spin was going to happen. Netflix is ultimately going to win, but it won't close this year. They won't get regulatory approval. Has anything happened to change that view?
No, I mean, look, I think that is what we believe. And look, there's always the outside possibility. Larry Ellison is one of the world's richest people. Instead of putting $12 billion into this, could he put 40, 50, 60 billion of cash, dramatically delever Paramount, enable them to raise the bid, equitize the current bid? Sure, there is certainly that potential. There have been no signs throughout this entire process, if anything, going to get Middle East money, leveraging Paramount to 7 times at closing. There are certainly no signs yet that the Ellison family is willing to put far, far more capital in. And so that's why we still struggle to believe that Paramount wins. I know it feels like consensus on Wall Street that Paramount's going to come out with a knockout bid. It just hasn't happened, and it feels hard to see it happening right now.
Okay, Rich. Well, we're sick of talking about the ins and outs of the bid and what does each bid look like and are they going to raise it. There is something new this morning that maybe we're a little more excited to talk about, and that's Ted Sarandos's come to Jesus moment on theatrical release, apparently. He gave an interview to the New York Times, And in it, he said, when this deal closes, we'll own a theatrical distribution engine that is phenomenal and produces billions of dollars of theatrical revenue. He says that he's committing to keeping the 45-day window between theatrical and streaming release. And he says, we want to win. I want to win box office. And he sort of insists in the interview that this is not a change of heart for him and for Netflix.
I mean, look, to be fair, Netflix was never going to do advertising until they did advertising. Right. So, there's certainly business models change over time. I think when Ted says he wants to win box office, I think he'd love to win weekend box office. Whether he is really in it to win global full year box office, I think is a very different question. And my guess is there's some very careful use of words when he's describing win the box office. Like if he's putting a movie in theaters, I'm sure he wants Narnia to do amazing on IMAX screens when it comes out this December. Whether he wants to be the box office champ ever, I think is an entirely different story. But look, I think the reality is Hollywood is very worried. I mean, they're actually worried about both transactions because you've got, if Warner Brothers and Paramount merged, that's two studios, just like Fox and Disney merged. And while they talked about keeping both studios, look just years later, that's obviously been collapsed. And so Hollywood is scared of change. I think they're worried about Netflix because of what happens to theatrical, in terms of their commitment to theatrical. They're worried about Paramount because it is two studios into one. And I think Ted is trying to give assurances that they're not anti-theater. I mean, they've released a lot of movies in theaters. They've even put Stranger Things in theaters, on New Year's Eve. So I think they see theatrical as a way to create events. Whether it's 45 days, I find it hard to believe that any part of Hollywood is going to be able to stick to 45-day windows, given what's happening in box office. I mean, the thing that no one's talking about, Julie, box office is down 50%. Sorry, attendance, not box office. Attendance, meaning butts in seats, are down 50% from before the pandemic. And so the theatrical experience is just becoming less and less appealing to Americans. This is not a Netflix thing. This is just fundamental human behavior.
Yeah, me trying to convince my 16-year-old to go and see a movie in a theater, forget about it. He would much rather be on our couch, Rich. So that, in theory, is good for Netflix, which brings me to Netflix earnings, which are out next week. And I'm curious what you're looking for there and kind of what you think investors need to zero in on.
Look, I think investors are going to be focused really on, is Netflix doing the transaction? Meaning, are they bidding for Warner out of a position of weakness? Like, is engagement stagnating? Are they having trouble driving engagement and driving more subscriber growth and revenue without Warner? And is this sort of a defensive move? Or is Netflix crushing it, meaning they're really seeing an acceleration from a really strong slate of content in Q4? Is the advertising business starting to kick in and starting to accelerate ARPU? And are they doing this from a position of strength? And I think that's going to be really important because the stock is down on the perception that this is sort of a reaction to weakness. So if Netflix comes out on earnings and really does well, I think it's going to, really cause a surge in the stock because it will change people's perspective on how important this asset is to them, meaning are they doing great without it? And is this just an accelerant to the story that's already doing well?
Really, really good point. I'm going to be really interested to see those numbers. I want to go back to the idea of Hollywood being scared or a lot of changes coming and them trying to grapple with it. And I want to talk to you about the deal that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon struck with Netflix. Speaking of changing and adapting Hollywood. Sure. They made this new movie called The Rip, and under sort of a different kind of model, there are additional financial benefits that can be accrued to the entire cast and crew once they get to certain viewership thresholds on Netflix. It's a Netflix deal. What do you think of this deal? Is this a new paradigm, or is this just like a one-off because these guys have a lot of power and can do it?
Look, I think Netflix really wanted this film. I haven't watched it yet. I actually downloaded it because I wanted to watch it on the plane this evening. Look, Netflix, go back to the original place we started this conversation, Julie. There's a flexibility, right? And I think they're always looking at alternative models. I mean, buying Warner Brothers would obviously put them in a very different business model. On all of the movies that are already greenlit and in process, all of those have back-end payouts to talent rather than upfront guarantees. So, look, The Rip, which I think is supposed to be a very good movie this weekend from Artist Equity, which is Ben and Matt's production company, It does have a different economic model. Netflix has not done that on anything else. But look, Netflix also did an IMAX-only release for Narnia, which is coming out later this year. They obviously put K-pop Demon Hunters in theaters for a few days. They did the Stranger Things stunt. Like, there is a just general, like, test and learn, I think would be this, in many ways, Julie. Like, does this work out better for Netflix? Do they get access to different content they couldn't otherwise get access to? I think it's showing a flexibility of management, meaning that there's no religion that is unchangeable for them if it leads to winning long term.
That makes sense. And the other story I want to ask you about in terms of a changing Hollywood is the one on Matthew McConaughey this week, where it was reported that he has trademarked all right, and other sayings and his face. And this appears to be an attempt to stave off AI using his image. And obviously that's the other big threat that Hollywood is worried about right now. Do you think
threat and opportunity, right? I mean, movies, like, think about how long it takes to make an animated movie. I mean, 3 to 4 years. You finish a movie. Let's just say you're shooting. You shoot House of Dragon over in Europe, and it's this massive $30 million an episode type budget. And you need to make changes, and restaging it or bringing the cast back. Like, those things are incredibly expensive. Does AI have the ability to sort of enable you to do things in post-production that you never could do before? And there's lots of guild issues to work out, but I think ultimately this is going to meaning AI is going to make movie production faster and cheaper. And it's going to allow for more content, because if you take the same amount of spending and you can spread it across a wider array of pieces of content, that's going to be great, because every single company, not named Netflix, certainly needs to create a heck of a lot more content to compete in the streaming wars. And so I think AI, as much as it scares Hollywood, it's a huge opportunity over time.